Hi, welcome to the Pharmacy Operators Podcast. Today we have on a very special guest, Harry Travis. And we'll go into a quick intro in just a sec, but I want to give him a little bit of something to start. So, Harry, you've spent 40 years watching pharmacy transform. You've seen IV automation, specialty scale up, PBM consolidation, digital medicine. You've seen a lot of this changes everything type moments. And you're really known for the AI pharmacy guy, you know a lot of what's going on in the space. So when you say AI is different, what makes you so sure this time that that's true?
Hi, Eesha. Thanks again for the opportunity to be on your podcast. This is exciting and it's going to be fun. I think what's different this time is, as you say, that phrase is probably overused. So, it really wasn't different when people were saying it's different this time in the past. And I think that if the technologists have invented intelligence, if we are at a point now where we have intelligence as a tool, that the tool that we're using in AI is really smart, I think that changes everything. And I also think if you apply that to kind of many of the practices of pharmacy, which are repetitive cognitive tasks. So you hear that term a lot in the world of AI, that any repetitive cognitive task is a target for AI. There are a lot of repetitive cognitive tasks in pharmacy, and as AI gets smart, it's just going to start eating them up. So that's why I believe it really is going to be different this time.
So I guess let's talk a little bit about what you've seen in the space and where you come from. So um, I'll give you a chance to do a quick introduction and sort of talk about, where you've spent time in the space, what your favorite parts were, and um, what kind of grounds you in, okay, this is where I know pharmacy is going to get interesting.
Okay, so real quick background, trained as a pharmacist at the University of Pittsburgh School of Pharmacy, worked in community pharmacy for a couple of years before going back to get an MBA at the University of Virginia, then never really practiced pharmacy again and really kind of went the management route with a stint at Baxter in hospital products in the early days of the transfer of IV admixture duties off of the floors of hospitals down to central admixture services in pharmacies. And we can kind of talk about how that was, 30 plus years ago, and how some of the aspects of that actually are relevant today in terms of proper use of time. But then through a deal between Baxter and Cardinal, I ended up in Cardinal's specialty distribution system, my first general manager role. I was there when we shipped the very first vial of Enbrel. And we thought that it wasn't going to sell because it was too expensive and who's going to inject themselves. And you can see how that has changed and how your perceptions at one time can change dramatically over time. But then I spent the balance of my career in specialty pharmacy and managed care operations at Accredo and at Aetna. Accredo when it was early stage before it was acquired by Medco, and then Aetna running Aetna's mail order and specialty pharmacy, and then finishing at CVS Caremark on the Caremark side in the PBM running the specialty pharmacy, the mail order operation, customer service, and what we called clinical operations, which was all of the folks who were processing prior auth and determinations and appeals and things like that. And I finished at my kind of corporate career about 2.5 years ago, got out on my own to do board work, consulting, mentoring, and in the process have formed this organization called the RX Roundtable, which is just a network and community of independent experts, a lot of people kind of my background, similar backgrounds, lots of experience in pharmacy and benefit management out on their own. And we guide and counsel early stage companies who are trying to navigate the really complex world of kind of pharmacy and drug channel management in the US. As a result, I've talked to a whole heck of a lot of CEOs and founders of AI companies. So I kind of have a postgraduate degree from the School of Interviewing and Hard Knocks of just talking to lots of AI folks and layering that on top of all of my pharmacy ops experience. I think I have an interesting perspective on kind of where this thing could go, just broadly.
Yeah, that's
Well,
excellent.
that's a
So,
little bit about me.
I mean, not too shabby having spent time in the two largest specialty pharmacies in the US. I'm sure that gives you a lot of insight into kind of, especially at scale, where time can be freed up, where are some of the highest leverage points that you can start applying AI to, and what kind of problems are going to come up in terms of, implementation, change management, all that stuff. And we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. Before we get there, I want to double click on a couple of things you said there. So take me back to the Baxter days. You were literally in the room launching the first pre-mixed IV drug delivery system. What did that experience teach you about how pharmacy actually adopts innovation?
Yeah, that was, as you described it, it was in the days when the IVI mixture process was very labor intense and many of the drugs were being added to Baxter IV containers. And we developed the technology to do that at the manufacturing step so the pharmacists didn't have to do it. And the products were essentially called premixed products, everything from potassium chloride to lidocaine to antibiotics. And the one of the things that I learned and we learned as a team is how do you sell the value of the product? Is it just about the time being saved, or is it the assured sterility? Is it the better labeling? I'm just kind of thinking back to those days, and it was really all about the value of a better product and how do you sell that value to an organization that has many stakeholders in it. And the pharmacy budget is one thing, the nursing budget is another, the risk management budget is another. You're kind of touching all of them with your value proposition, but you only have one decision maker in the pharmacy, or you have a buyer in the pharmacy. So you're trying to get your purchaser to think more broadly across the whole organization. Does that sound familiar with what we're trying to do today with AI across, the value of it across a much broader organization, but there's only one buyer? I kind of think so.
Yeah. I guess when we talk about value, it would be remiss to not include kind of thinking about data as well. So, you went from Baxter to Cardinal to Medco to Aetna, each one with a different vantage point on the pharmacy value chain and different access to data that's valuable. Looking back, was there a moment where you realized, whoever controls the data controls the margin, and how do you think about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting way of phrasing it. Whoever controls the data controls the margin. When I present on kind of the pharmacy ecosystem to either players who are outside of the system or new to the system, and they're trying to figure out how complicated it is to navigate around all of the different players in the system, the payers and the intermediaries and the providers and the prescribers and pharmacies, I say, you got to follow three things. You have to follow the flow of the product, who's touching the product. You've got to follow the flow of the data, who has the data and where is it going, and then follow the money. And oftentimes the money is following both the product. You got to buy a product, you got to sell it. But a lot of money is following the data, which is represented by outcomes, experience, gaps in care, all of that stuff. So I wouldn't say it's not as binary as you ask. Whoever controls the data controls the margin. The more data that you can have, the more data you can control, the more money you're going to make, the higher value you have. And that this is true of, you just think of all the players in the specialty pharmacy chain of pharmacies and care managers or care path managers or hubs or intermediaries of all sorts. There are a lot of different kind of players in the scheme that are either adding data, pulling data, aggregating data. And I think AI is a technology and a tool that's going to disrupt a lot of these nodes, because there are a lot of people, a lot of bodies doing data analysis and collecting data. If that is going to be replaced by voice agents collecting the data or agents analyzing the data, people are going to be able to deploy things much differently. And the firm that can kind of hire 100 people no longer has that kind of power, because you don't have to hire 100 people anymore. Maybe you only have to hire 3 and you deploy 300 agents. So it is all about the data. And now it's about, okay, how do I get it? How do I obtain it? And how do I analyze it with a completely new set of tools?
Yeah, makes sense. So there's a company you worked at, eTech RX?
eTech RX, right.
Yeah, okay. That one is particularly fascinating to me. So you were CEO of this company that was putting sensors inside pills to confirm patients actually took their medication. That's about as close to the patient as a pharmacy gets. And what did that experience show you about the gap between what we think patients are doing and what they're actually doing?
Yeah, just a minute on the core technology. We all remember the potato experiment or the orange experiment that you ran in high school, where you stuck an anode and a cathode into a potato or a piece of citrus fruit, and you could light a light bulb or get a voltmeter to move. You can miniaturize that now with microchips down to a little bit of magnesium and silver chloride on a microchip, and essentially drop it into an ionic fluid and turn the microchip on. And if you program the microchip properly, which is kind of amazing to think about, but you can then have the microchip turn into essentially a transmitter. So you put that on the wall, you miniaturize it, put it on the wall of a gelatin capsule, swallow it. You now have what the FDA has called an ingestion event monitor. You can monitor the fact that somebody ingested that capsule. So you can track a medicine pill or a capsule, the last mile. You now know it got in. And I'm the only person, I often joke about it, I'm the only person you'll ever meet that's eaten 100 computer chips. Because as they say, if the CEO doesn't eat the dog food, you're not going to be able to sell it. So I was the CEO. I had to demonstrate that you could actually swallow these things and show that your cell phone got a signal. It didn't go directly to the cell phone. It went to an intermediary little receiver. They had like a watch band that then Bluetoothed it to the cell phone. But it was all about tracking medication adherence. And we know medication adherence or medication non-adherence is a big problem today, correct? And show me a company that has really built a solid business plan and has been truly successful in the medication adherence scheme. That's hard, because medication adherence is valued differently depending on the therapeutic situation by different entities. Is it the pharmaceutical manufacturer that wants you to take that really expensive pill? Or is it the payer who wants you to take it because they don't want you to have a heart attack or a stroke downstream? So the trick with medication adherence is trying to find the right kind of value proposition for the therapeutic situation and who is the entity that will pay for it. And we learned the hard way at eTech RX that it's very hard to do that. We got almost derailed as a result of COVID, which got me back into CVS Caremark. The company is still up and running, has done an interesting pivot to other markets, but is still doing work in oral therapies, doing work in HIV and PrEP and monitoring PrEP adherence. But it's still a very hard slog to get a truly profitable medication adherence play. So what I learned is pressure test your value proposition really hard early stage before you get a lot of money spent on the product.
Yeah. I mean, you've really seen a lot of different kinds of innovation in the space. And so let's go into like what's happening today and what kind of sort of operational reality check we can have for folks listening. So for, the AI landscape today, there's a lot of noise. Every vendor has an AI story. In your view, what is actually working in specialty pharmacy AI today, not in a pitch deck, but in production?
I think we're really in the early innings of AI working. We're in the early innings of kind of single point solutions. I haven't seen, and I'm by no means an expert and know every corner, nor do I know every corner of the market. But from what I've seen, kind of one man's opinion, there are voice agents that are working, both outbound and inbound voice agents that are working. I don't think a voice agent has completely taken over a call center 100%, but in limited cases, in limited situations, voice is proving to be worthwhile. I was talking to just a small community pharmacy. It wasn't specialty, but just as an example, I was talking to a small community, a chain of independent pharmacies, about 18 pharmacies out in the West. And they had 2,000 of their they called 2,000 of their customers with a voice agent, and 99% satisfaction with the call, and 80% of the people who were called thought they were talking to a human. So, that is the kind of thing that's going to scale to more and more applications. But it is still a point solution. It's just one point on, and it's not even every call or every situation around that pharmacy. It's just maybe enrollment in Medicare and checking on flu shots and that sort of thing. But it's a canary in the coal mine kind of event. This thing is going to grow. Likewise, agents, agentic programming, on-screen programming, the ability back to the repetitive cognitive task, where I'm seeing, kind of ground being made, beachheads established, is in the early stages of the prescription process, where a prescription comes in electronically or via fax, and it needs to go through the intake process. It needs to be categorized, double-checked, and sorted in any number of bins or queues. That is now being done by agents. And you're having technicians, pharmacy technicians, supervising AI agents to do that. I was talking to another small chain of pharmacies, and their pharmacy technician has an AI agent that it's working so well, she's named the agent Arnold. And so Arnold is working for her, and they didn't have to hire another pharmacy technician when they bought another store or opened up another store. So you can see at the margin in these really little micro cases, the beginnings of the labor impact as well. But again, it's a single point solution. I think ultimately we are going to have much more intelligent pharmacy management systems, where the agents within the system, or the system will just process the prescription front to back, right through the prior auth, right through the DUR, right through medication therapy management, right through benefit investigation. And you'll just have really only extreme kind of exceptions kicked out for human review.
Very interesting. It's for folks that are listening in. So Harry has probably heard maybe 40 AI companies do their thing at RX Roundtable, and talks to a lot of the people in the space, stays in close contact with a lot of consultants in the space, as well as owners and operators. And so this perspective on what's kind of working in the field is really grounded in that sort of frontline feedback that's happening on what he's seeing. Let's talk about the flip side of that. So what's the AI application everyone seems excited about in specialty pharmacy that you think is overhyped or further out than people realize?
I guess my first kind of knee-jerk response would be benefit verification. I think there's a lot of good going on with benefit verification, but I think that there are so many facets to it, and any given specialty pharmacy or pharmacy might have patients coming from 40 different payers or insurance plans. I was talking to somebody, again, a pharmacy out on the West Coast, and they said, okay, we're in network for 50 PBMs. Okay, 50 PBMs, think about that. Okay, now maybe 80% of their claims are in one or two, but still they have to cover 50 different benefit or 50 different bins. And what are the benefits under all of that? So it's going to be a long time before we get to kind of the promised land of total benefit verification. And e-benefit verification, EBV, has been talked about for years and years and years. And we're still, I think, a long way from getting there because there's so many different benefit designs and there's so many different ways of accessing them. AI is helping, but probably not at the rate that we would like or the market is hyping it. I think we just need a little more reality behind that.
Yeah, definitely what we've seen in that particular one, that like particular problem, benefit verification, is that for specialty drugs, you have things like, is it covered under the pharmacy benefit or the medical? That's like one level of complexity.
Yep.
Another level is there secondary insurance? Is there tertiary insurance? Do you have to do a prior auth for both of these, all three of these? Like, what's the situation there? We've also seen, maybe the specialty pharmacy is out of network and then it has to be routed elsewhere. And even just getting to the right phone number, the right person on the call, that can be a
Right.
challenge. And when you do get the right person, the data that you get back may not match what you find digitally. And so then there's a question of accuracy even on a phone call. And so there's a lot of sort of edge cases and scenarios. And like, I've given a couple of examples here, but benefit verification is definitely not an easy undertaking at all.
No, and somebody described it to me, and I don't know how accurate this is, but it's an interesting kind of thought experiment, is that they're in the banking industry. Okay, the banking industry, you're able to check your balance anywhere. You're able to do all your transactions really easily because there is a tight industry standard. FINRA
Yeah.
just locked everything down. There is no such thing on kind of the benefit side of this. As you know, when you design a benefit and you stick it on a PDF, it's whatever you want it to be. And it's like, okay, someone else has to figure out how to read it and communicate it. So we have this jungle of benefit designs out there that fortunately AI now can read, and we are making progress, but it's still the foundation of the business is still pretty archaic.
Yeah, that's such an important point. I think a lot of people miss. So we had a chat last week or the week before with Scott Hughes from CareMedics, who had been at Relay Health and Cover My Meds. And really, those two companies came into being because they set a standard in pharmacy that allowed for real-time prescriptions to
Mm-hmm.
happen, real-time prior auths to happen, without a data standard being like basically forced into place by these companies. We would never have reached a point where you send a script from a doctor and it immediately goes to the pharmacy through like a digital,
Right,
transaction.
right.
And the impact of this was incredible, right? Like now pharmacies within minutes get a prescription in. For prior auth, it went from like faxes getting sent and 2-week turnarounds to like same day responses from insurance companies. So the real impact was time that you get a patient on therapy. And for benefit verification, it's very puzzling why there hasn't been some kind of standardization that's been pushed for. Maybe it just takes a company to be like, hey, this is what we're doing, everybody get on board. But
Right.
that's really what it necessitates. And I think most people don't quite grasp the infrastructure necessity here that you're bringing up, which is a excellent point. Okay, so you've run large teams at CVS, Caremark, and Aetna. AI adoption in pharmacy isn't just, a technology decision. It's usually a change management decision. You have a lot of different teams it can impact, providers it might impact, patients. Where do you see operators underestimating that people and process side?
I think the need for communication, the need to communicate the need for change in terms that the rank and file really understand. I also think trust is really important. So as any leader is communicating, okay, we're going to make a change, or just simply state that we're going to make any change, whatever the change is. Does the audience trust that what they're hearing is actually what's going to happen? There's so much skepticism of corporate leadership out there, so that and I believe that so much can happen faster and better if people trust one another. So as just a kind of a core philosophy, if you can figure out and measure the level of trust in the organization, that gives you probably a pretty good barometer of how well the change is going to go, regardless of what the change is. Now, you could be changing the color of the walls in the building or something like that. But if you could come up with a barometer of, on a scale of 1 to 10, and 10 is I trust you like a family member, and 1 is, where the Hatfields and the McCoys. If you could figure out where you are in that and figure out what it takes to move you forward, I think that's a key player here. One of my favorite books, business books, is the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Scott Lincecum, and it's a captivating title, The 5 Dysfunctions of the Team. Oh, I want to read, but it's really about trust and how you can look at a team and how they act in any kind of situation and tie it back to, do they really trust one another?
If you're a specialty pharmacy operator right now, maybe you're running a mid-sized shop, feeling the margin pressure, hearing about AI constantly, where would you even start? What's the honest answer to that question?
I would start in 2 places, one kind of external and one internal. One internal to the pharmacy. I would try to find my simplest repetitive cognitive task that happens most frequently and look at that and take a really simple approach, which is, okay, how do I automate that? I would also, actually, I'm going to modify it. I'd do 3 things. I would look, where can I improve my productivity on a simple kind of, I'm just going to hit a simple kind of, I'm not trying to hit a home run. I just want to get the first base, that thing. Secondarily, I would look outside and spend just a little bit of time paying attention to what's going on in AI outside of pharmacy, even outside of healthcare, just to get a kind of a breath of fresh air to see what's going on in the rest of the market, to motivate me to realize that, okay, this business is, if the legal profession is getting blown up, if the consulting profession is getting blown up, if Hollywood's getting blown up, if basic sciences are getting blown up with AI, I need to realize that there's nothing really special about pharmacy that AI can't solve. So we have a tendency to think, well, this is really complicated and this is really hard, and we're going to be the last ones to change. Not so fast. You need to keep a little bit of attention outside to see what's going on in other industries. And then the final thing would be, and I often say this in presentations, you can really boil down the use of AI, and this is a real oversimplification. You can do 2 things with AI. You can either cut or you can create. Do you want to cut steps, costs, people, vendors? You can do that. Okay. And you will generate a lot of productivity gains and a lot of margin and a lot of profit. But if you're not also creating something new as a result of AI, you're going to get outmoded by somebody in your industry who is. So you've got to kind of operate in this kind of dual mode of kind of short-term, long-term. I've got to, work on the productivity side of this or quality improvement or whatever. But I also have to be thinking way downfield to say, okay, what can I create new? What value proposition can I create? What service can I create? What market can I enter now that I have an AI tool? Because there'll be people out there entering this market, my market, who were never in this market before, because now they have an AI tool and they can program faster than anybody else and they can spin something up, and all of a sudden you're seeing competitors come out of nowhere that, the traditional competitors are getting upended. Where did these guys come from? Well, all of a sudden they have a tool that no one ever had before.
Yeah, you don't want to be left behind for sure. Okay, so I think to close off, the last question that I want to ask is, and I want a real answer, not a consultant answer. If a specialty pharmacy operator is doing absolutely nothing on AI right now, what is the one thing you tell them to do this week?
Well, I gave you some things, just, the repetitive cognitive task, but I would say listen to the AI Daily Breakdown podcast, or subscribe to the Rundown AI newsfeed. The one thing that you can do right now is to get informed and get motivated. Two of my favorite news feeds are the AI Daily Rundown is a great podcast. It's like 15 minutes long. They give you some headlines and then they go deep on one article. And that's the podcast. And then there's a different daily e-newsletter called the Rundown AI, I think it is, or the AI Rundown. And they just give you 5 articles and they capsulize them neatly across the whole industry. And if you just watch that for 5 days, you realize, holy cow, the world is really going to change. Because they're, bringing you stuff that's happening at NVIDIA or Microsoft or XAI or, in different parts of the world. A lot's going on in China. And it's like, wow, I better get on the train or, I'm going to be sitting here and the world's going to change before I realize it. That's what I would tell people to do.
Yeah. So I guess to summarize across the past couple of questions, I think the key takeaways were something like, 1, think about what's your simple, repetitive tasks you're doing every day that are just like rote, seem to be easy to automate. Number 2, get informed what's going on in your industry, outside of your industry, and just broadly. And number 3, get a little excited. I think your last point was like, basically keep up to date with what's going on, because it actually is pretty exciting what people are able to do now.
That's a great summary.
All right. Well, I think that basically wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much, Harry, for joining us. And folks on the call, feel free to check out RX Roundtable. And you'll also see Harry around at different events, conferences. He speaks pretty widely on AI and pharmacy. So keep an eye out for his talks throughout. Harry, any conferences coming up you want to mention?
AMCP, the Academy of Managed Care Pharmacy in Nashville, April 13. There is an AI pre-conference on Monday, April 13, and then the full annual meeting is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 14th, 15th, and 16th. It's a great conference for kind of the nexus of managed care pharmacy from a specialty standpoint, non-specialty, pharmacy, payer, pharma. It's a great mix of the key players in the industry. That's the one I would point people to.
All right, perfect. All right, thanks so much for coming on, Harry.
Thank you, Eesha. I appreciate it.